So one of the things that trips people up sometimes when building IK is not understanding the preferred angle. So I'm going to take a look at the IK and how you set it up, and when building joints, how to set your own preferred angle. So a lot of times you'll hear people say that when you build a joint chain, you must always have a slight bend in it. And the reason for that is because they're trying to trick Maya into create a preferred angle by default. The preferred angle is going to tell the joint chain which way to bend. So as you can see here, I have a very simple joint chain for this arm here. The arm is built fairly straight, and I put a little bit of bend in there. And just so we can see what this looks like, I'll just do a quick bind on it. There we go. And I'll go to skeleton, create IK handle, and I'm going to do reset the tool and leave it on rotate plane solver. So the rotate plane solver is probably what most of you are used to seeing, which is the one that can have a pull vector. So I'm going to go ahead here and click on the root joint and click on what would be the wrist joint, and it's going to create my joint chain or my IK handle for me. Here it is here. And you see that this has some values here for the pull vector X, Y, and Z. If I hit T, because for special manipulators, you can see that here's the the IK handle itself, and then there's another manipulator for the pull vector. Now that pull vector, you're familiar on most rigs, that's going to tell the elbow which way to point by rotating the arm. Now this does work. I'm not going to be against it, but I don't necessarily recommend it. The main reason for that is if you're doing any sort of pulling of this arm out like that to straighten the arm, notice you get sort of an inverse bend that looks a little bit unnatural. That's one reason. The other is if you're doing anything that has to do with distances and trying to do like a stretchy arm IK, you're gonna have a little more trouble getting this complete distance correct. Because when do you want to have it stretched? Do you want to have it stretch here, or do you want to have it to start stretching here? So what I like to do is build my joint chain straight to avoid that. But then people say, oh, okay, well that's not going to work because then your IK won't work correctly. Well, let's take a look. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is build a joint chain that's completely straight. So I'm going to place the joint here, place it somewhere around where the elbow is, and go to the wrist, and then out of there. Now, it doesn't have to be straight in grid access. If I do have a little bit of rotation on there, I'm fine with that too. But I do like to have it straight. And one of the other things that's nice about having it straight is if I need to change where this is, it's very easy just to slide that into the right position and then move this to the right position, and I'm good to go. So I'll give it a slight rotation to match with, a little bit better with that wrist joint. I'm going to freeze my rotations on there. All right. So the problem that most people see when they have this is if I go to this joint and I look at its preferred angle, it's set to 0, 0, 0. Now that preferred angle before is implied because we had a slight bend in the joint. But now that we have a perfectly straight joint, it's 0, 0, 0. Before Maya 2024, you would put this on there, and when you went to bend it, it wouldn't bend at all. It just would stay a straight angle. Now what it does is it tries to guess which way that you want it to rotate. And in this case, it's guessed incorrectly. I want it to rotate the other way around. So I'm going to go in here, and I just want to show you first. I'm going to select this and say 0 on there. And watch what happens when I try and move this. You see, this is what you'd get prior to 2024, right? So when you do get an IK that's bending the wrong direction because you forgot to set that preferred angle, while you can go in here and try and force it the other direction, I don't really recommend it. It just doesn't seem to want to work. I don't know if there's some sort of history in there or something, but quite frankly, it's just easier just to rebuild it, delete it, and start over. And what I want to do is set that preferred angle. So what I'm going to do is take the middle joint. You can actually do any of the joints, but I'm going to take this joint, rotate it, and you want to make sure you rotate it in only one axis. If you rotate it in any other axis, you can get 3 values in there, and based on your rotation axis and also based on the way that rotations happen hierarchically, you're going to get something that you don't want. So always make sure to rotate in only one axis. Then you could right click and say set preferred angle. I'll zero this back out. And let's relook at our attribute editor here, and you can see I have a little value on there. And this value can be really low. It doesn't have, as long as it's just one direction or the other and not 0, it's going to give that IK an inclination of which way to bend. So now when I create my IK handle, I'll go to create IK handle, put that on there, and if I move it, it goes the right direction. If I look at where the pull vector is, it's in the way that we want it, and we can move it around. So I just wanted to add that when I am building joints this way, I often will just build straight from the base of the limb into, like, say, the wrist here. And the reason I do that is because there may be a slight angle to here, and I want to make sure I get that correct. If I'm building straight and then rotating, it might not. It takes a little bit more time, right? So I'm going to show my axes on here, and I want to make sure that I orient that the correct way. See how it bounced just a little tiny bit. And to find the center one, I have tools to do this, but I can also just do it by hand. I'm going to Control G to duplicate that joint, and I want to make sure I'm in parent space. And now when I slide that joint, you see how it stays right in line? And if you look at my translate X, Y, and Z, I'm only moving in X, which is what I want. If I'm in object space and I move it, actually it's working, but sometimes it won't be in the right place. So parent space is just where you want to be. So I'll get to where I want it, select the wrist joint here, and select the elbow joint here, hit P, and now I've parented those together, and I have that elbow right where I want it to be. And what other things I can do too, so, and I can just say, you know what, it should be, let's make it easy on ourselves, 21.5, whoops, 21.5, there we go. And that wrist, since it doesn't have to be exact, that looks like 26, let's try 26. It's 26.5, cool. So now I actually have a little bit easier math later on if I want to do some stretching or something like that. And I generally will just kick one out right here. That way I can just soak up some of the weight for the wrist on this joint here. And now I've got it to where I want it to be. And then I can go rename it, set my preferred angle, and I'm good to go. Incidentally, if I have a bent joint chain, which is fine if we're doing something that has a bent joint chain, I'm going to, again, go to none, so I have it in the right place. And if I want to move this joint here, right, if I want to slide it to go towards its root, it's very difficult, right? If I do this, I'm going to get my local rotation axis off axis on that upper joint. But again, if I go to axis parent, check out now that my X is aligned perfectly, I can slide it right along there, and I won't mess up the local rotation axis of the root joint. And since I mentioned it, I figured I'd just show the tools that I use to insert joints and extend joints. So I have a little tool here that's a split joint, so I can just click that. You see I now get a split between the two. I can split it as much times if I want to. I can also go in here and give it like a bunch of splits. So let's say I wanted to put, not 21, but let's say I wanted 5 on there. I could just do that and split that through. And if I wanted that little extender, I could just extend it like that, and then I can even pull that out if I want to. All right, I hope this has been helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.